Tēnei te mihi nui ki a koutou, tā manuhiri. Nōku te hōnore, nōku te whiwhi, te haramai, ki tēnei hui, a tātou, i tēnei ahi nei, ki te kōrero ki a koutou, nō reira ka nui te mihi, kai te hoa mātai, tēnā koe hoa. I could not turn down your request. That came in just last week, even though this is the busiest time of my year. But when, you know, someone who holds the name Mātai, Mātai i ngā whetū, e iri anga ki te umo rangi nui, e whakātu ana i ngā tohu ki te ao Māori, Smith. When he asks you to come along and talk about stars, well, you know, you're pretty much, it's a given. Kia ora hoki koutou, te iwi kua hono mai in the ipurangi. I usually tell a few jokes, risque ones, just to the iwi that are there, but I'll hold my tongue and bite my tongue, and I don't know who this is going out to. He oia no tēnā koutou. Now, it would be really wrong of me to come in and talk to you about Matariki without giving you some context about where this knowledge base comes from for me. You know, wherever I go, I start off by saying I do not know everything there is to know about Matariki. Ko nā kōrero kei au, ko nā kōrero kei au. What I have is what I have, and what I've researched and what was given to me, and that's what I'm sharing. If you have a different kōrero about Matariki 7 stars, kei te pai, hoia tō waka. Okay, I've come here in the hope that you'll respect my right to tell this version of the story. And if you have a different version, I will completely respect your right to be wrong. I will respect your right to tell your version. I do not know. There are tribal variances, there are differences. I'm just going to give you what I know and tell you where it comes from, firstly. So there was a man who came from the Whanganui region, the upper end actually. His name was Te Piki Kōtuku, all the way on the other side of the island. He left his iwi. He married a woman within two wharetoa, left there, married a woman within Ngāti Maniapoto, left there, ended up in Ngāti Pikiao. He married his last wife there. It's kind of not looking good for the whakapapa, I guess. This does not come down to me. And he married his last wife, and his name was Te Piki Kōtuku. Te Piki Kōtuku was a tohunga whaiwhaia. Whaiwhaia he mākutu. Those of you who was a kind of a sorcerer from, I always say if he was in Harry Potter, he'd be in Slytherin. He was a sorcerer, was Te Piki Kōtuku, and he was a tohunga kōkōrangi. So he was an astronomer. He had a son in Ngāti Pikiao. His name was Himiona Te Piki Kōtuku. Himiona travelled to Ruatahuna and married one of our kuia. And they had this man here. This is Te Kōkau Te Piki Kōtuku. And Te Kōkau had a son, his name is Rāwiri Te Kōkau. So these two men were tohunga whaiwhaia and they were tohunga kōkōrangi. So they were astronomers and they were witch doctors. He mākutu ēnei. And they lived in Ruatahuna. And in the year 1897, 1897, Elton Best, and you all know who Elton Best is, the author of many, many writings. He turns up and interviewed these two men because he wanted their knowledge of astronomy. And he interviewed them for a couple of days, and they gave him some kōrero, and Best went off and wrote this book called Astronomical Knowledge of the Māori. I'd hazard a guess that 90% of that knowledge and astronomical knowledge of the Māori comes from these two old men. So they gave a little bit of kōrero to Best, and Best went off and wrote it down. And then he said, ka pai, he said to one of his tohunga tūtaka naho, I'm going to write their names in my book. And he said, no, you're not. He tapu, he whaiwhaia, they are witch doctors. So he struck their names from the record. So in that book, you won't see their names in the astronomical knowledge of the Māori. So what Best didn't know is, as payment for their kōrero, Best gave to these two old men an old nautical star map. It folds out probably to be about the size of that screen. It's got all the Western names and constellations, stars in the sky. And he gave it to these two old men from the year 1898 until 1933. they wrote a manuscript. It's a 400-page manuscript. It's like a big old ledger, Bible. That manuscript has about 1,000 Māori star names in there with the English equivalents because they had that star map. Every star has a kōrero, why it's called what it's called, how to read it, when it rises, when it sets, what it's connected to. It has waiata, whakapapa, karakia, all connected to these different 1,000 stars. On the map, they drew 106 constellations. Every constellation has a kōrero. And they wrapped this book up, put the map inside the book, and on his deathbed, Rawiri Te Kōkau gave it to his grandson. This is in the 1930s. He's about 11 years old. He gives him this book. Now, he's a tohunga. His koroua was a tohunga. He was petrified of the reputation of his grandfather, petrified. So he took that book. In his mind, he thought to himself, I'm going to bury that book or burn it or get rid of it, he tapu. But he was too scared, so he put that book in his cupboard and it stayed there for 50 years. Then his whakaputa mohi or grandson comes along and said, Koro, you know anything about Matariki? And he gave me that book. So I have that book, and the vast majority of the knowledge that I'm going to share to you comes from this book. I've had that book for about 20 years, and in 20 years I've gone around as much as the country as I can collecting data and knowledge and scraps of evidence about Māori astronomy. Much of it is in Te Reo Māori. In fact, the majority of it is actually in Waiata and Māori newspaper and karakia. It just hasn't been gone through. And speaking to people like here, people like Derek Lardali and other people who don't think they know anything, but actually when they start talking, they know so much, and the record is just growing and growing. And out of all of this stuff has come this book. This is the first publication of a whole host of astronomy publications that I'm going to put out in the next few years. On his deathbed, it's my koroua. He says to me, hey, taua puka puka, kaua e tuku. Don't you let that book go. He was warning me. Koinei tana ohaki. He's going to die. And he knows. He says, kaua e tuku. Ki te pā te ringa o tētahi ki te puka puka rā, koi mate. He was so fearful of his reputation, the reputation of his ancestors. He said, if anyone plays around with that, they might die. Kaua e tuku. I said, oh, ka pai. There goes any plans I have of a career in this space. Then he said to me, enari nā kōrero kei roto i te puka puka, me kimi i te huarahi ki ia hora e rā mātauranga ki te ao. He said, you need to find a way to share that knowledge with the rest of the world. His last words to me were, knowledge that isn't shared isn't knowledge. And from that whakatauki he gave me comes this book. So this is just the first, this is the English version. So we're going to have a look at the major kōrero, I guess, that's in this book. Some of the controversy that's come out of this book. Then I'm going to show you a film at the end that Te Wānanga Aotearoa made based on the research we did for the book. And then you can ask questions and hopefully lots of people bid on your artwork. Okay, so what is Matariki? Matariki is what most of the world know as Pleiades, okay? It's probably the best recorded and most commonly best known, I suppose, and best recorded cluster of stars in the night sky. This is a cave painting. This is 20,000 years old, this cave drawing. This comes from Waimarama Ngāti Kahungunu. No, this comes from France. You see the bull, and above the shoulder of the bull, you'll see this cluster. This is Pleiades. This is a 5,000-year-old star disk dug out of the ground in Germany. See the sun, here's the moon, and this is said to be Pleiades. Pleiades are what we commonly call the Seven Sisters. That is a Greek myth, okay? That is not a Māori kōrero. They are not seven sisters. Okay? That is a Greek myth. And here you see the power of colonization. We're so willing to accept Western beliefs and myths and make them Māori and disregard our traditional ones. They've never been seven sisters to the Māori. We took that on, particularly from Best. Here are the Greek names. And actually in the Greek names there are 9. Okay? They're Atlas and Pelion. Atlas is the guy that holds up the earth. you know, big muscly guy. Looks like he's from Ruatahuna. Neha Janie. And there are their seven sisters, their 7 daughters. Zeus is a bit of a frisky guy, and he wanted them all as wives, and the parents disagreed, so they turned them into a flock of doves and put them in the sky. Pleiades means flock of doves. That's how it gets its name. Someone told me once that Matariki means a flock of kereru. No. They don't get to that many where I'm from. Whitio was usually eating them by the time there's 4. Okay, Matariki is what we know as Pleiades. That's fairly much what it is. And right throughout the Pacific, right throughout Polynesia, it's the most commonly used word that these stars and group of stars are known by. So here in Aotearoa, it's Matariki. In Easter Island, it's Matariki. In Hawaii, it's Matariki. All the way up in the Solomon Islands, it's Matariki. Hawaii, it's Makali'i. So they're either variations of Matariki, meaning mostly the eyes of the chief or the eyes of the god. Only in Aotearoa do we have little eyes. Okay? That's because we are following Eldson Best's translation of Matariki. That is not a Māori kōrero. There is not one scrap of evidence after 20 years of research that I can find to support little eyes. Okay, so haere ake nei. So if you get up early in the morning tomorrow and you look out on the east, on the horizon, if you want to find Matariki, okay, the best place to look, the best thing to find is this group of stars here. This is the pot. Okay, you all know the pot. The pot. Now, if you follow Tautoru or Orion's belt, these 3 stars in the pot, from left to right, you come down here, that you will see the brightest star in the sky. This is Hine Takurua, the dog star. This is Sirius. That's why Sirius Black turns into a dog. Okay? If anything else is brighter in the night sky, it is either a planet, the moon, or a street lamp. Okay? And don't go right. So if you follow Tautoru from right to left, you'll come to this triangle shape in the sky. This is Te Kokota, and if you go just a little further left, you'll find Matariki. So whenever you want to find Matariki, you look for those 3 stars and just follow it to the left, and you'll bump into Matariki. Mike Rowa in his book says that Matariki is a shortened version of the name Ngā Mata o Te Ariki Tāwhiri Mātea. That's its name, which we have shortened to be Mata Ariki, and then we get lazy and we call it Matariki. Okay, that's where its name comes from. It's Eldson Best who says Mata equals eyes, Riki means little, so they're little eyes. There is no story to substantiate that. In the beginning of the world, Rangi and Papa were stuck together. Hei te mōhio koutou ki tēnei kōrero, tāne separated them. The God that disagreed with the separation of his parents, particularly because he loved his father more than the others, is Tāwhiri. And for the separation of his parents, Tāwhiri hated his brothers. And he decided ki te rāna ki te mate. He went to seek revenge on the separation of his parents. So he came across Tāne, and he grabbed Tāne by the neck and he gave Tāne a hiding. Then he sought Tangaroa, and he grabbed Tangaroa, and he gave Tangaroa a hiding. Then he chased after Rongo, chased after his other brothers, and they hid. Then he came to Tūmatauenga. Tūmatauenga is the God of humanity. He's our God. That's who we're like. And all our traits that we have, all of the goodies, they descend to us from Tu. All of the good traits. Jealousy, rage, revenge, anger, spite, they come from Tu. Only humans are like that. The other animals aren't like that, just us. And we are the kings at war. And so no matter how much he fought, whipped up his winds, chased after Tu, he couldn't defeat Tu. And Tu beat him. Tu beat him up quite severely. Now, one of the things that our ancestors used to do at tangihanga, we don't see it anymore, but because our culture has shifted. So what we do, if I say, oh, there's a tangi on, straight away everyone gets into black. Hey, we're black. In fact, it doesn't have to be a tangi. Go into the marae, black. That's the default colour. Our tipuna didn't wear black at a tangi, particularly the whānau pani, they wore rags. Kākahu taratara. They would wear rags to show that they are poor because someone's died. Other things that they used to do that we don't do, thank God, is they used to like cut their hair off. Hey, they would beat themselves. They would actually bruise themselves. If someone was on the marae, they'd hit themselves. They'd get a shell and they'd lacerate their face, their chest, and let blood flow. Okay, that is a sign of mourning. That is a sign of respect and mourning to someone that's lying on your marae. This originates, that tikanga originates with Tāwhiri Mātea. Once he was beaten by two, out of love for his father and spite towards his siblings, he tore his eyes out of their sockets, crushed them in his hands and threw them to the chest of his father, and they stuck to his chest. Nā mata o te ariki Tāwhiri Mātea. The eyes of the god Tāwhiri Mātea. Those are Tāwhiri's eyes. That's where Matariki gets its name from. That is a reason why you can always tell which way a bird's going to fly. Hey, a bird always flies with its head first. You can always tell how an eel will swim. An eel will swim with its head first. A tree grows a particular way. You can pretty much work out if you plant a seed, it'll come out, shoot from the ground, it won't start in the air. Okay, you can always work it out, but you can never really work out the weather. The weather, sometimes the winds are northerly, westerly, circles, because he's a blind god. Tāwhiri is a blind god, and he's an angry blind god. And hence, this is the world that we have. So that's where Matariki gets its name from. And all of these names here are additional names for the cluster of Matariki. Ka pai? Okay. My koroua gives the positions of the 9 stars of Matariki. He gives 9. Now, if others have 7, I don't want to say you're wrong. Okay, kei te pai, have your 7. Okay. They came out wrong. But have your 7. He just records a 9. And he says this is the position that they are in. He says why each is called what it's called. He says why they're located in this part of the cluster. He also gives a clue as to why he thinks the other 2 were missed out of the cluster, weren't named. The first man and the only man before Te Kōkau to name the 7 stars of Matariki was a man by the name of Hāmeora Pio from Whakatāne. He was the first, and he gave those names in his manuscript, and Best took those. And so we've all become 7 and 7 sisters. That doesn't mean that there were only 7. My koroua gives 9. Next year there'll probably be 15. Koe ka mōhio. But he says that this is where they're located, and he explains why. So I'm going to go through each of them and give you a little bit of a breakdown as to why they're called what they're called and what they mean. The oldest is a female, Pohutukawa. Pohutukawa is the star that connects us to the dead and our dead each year. This is a star that guides our mate across the night sky, night after night. I'll leave that, we'll come back to that. She's the oldest. The next is Tipu Anuku. Okay, I've seen some fantastic translations of this. It's really, really dangerous at times to break up Māori words. Okay, more often than not, you can't do that. You can make them mean anything. Tāteri's got some fantastic examples of this, but I'll let him talk about that. Sometimes words are compound words, like this one. Tipu means to grow. Tipu means to grow. A, in this context, mean in. Nuku, the ground. Okay, this is a star that's connected to all the things that grow in your garden. Will determine how well it's going to grow in the upcoming season. Tipu Arangi means to grow in the sky, and you'll ask what grows in the sky. Well, these things, anything that you catch and harvest from above your head, particularly the birds. Don't eat these. Waiti. Waiti means fresh water. If I say you've got a real waiti, it means you've got a clear and beautiful voice. So waiti, water. everything that's connected to, this is connected to everything that comes out of the lakes and the rivers, is waiti. And waita, ta is an old word for salt, as in tōta. Tōta means sweat, salty. Waita means salt water. It's connected to all of the animals that come out of Tangaroa. Waipunarangi, the water, puna, pooling in the sky. Okay, this is connected to rain. This star will determine what your rain and weather is going to be, as is this one. Ururangi means wind. Uru is wind. Haua uru, uru hau, uru tapu. These are all winds. And this will tell you how windy it's going to be, how dry your washing will be. And this is the last one, hiwai te rangi. Hiwai te rangi, this is going to sound very bibbidi bobbidi boo, kind of wonderful world of Disney. But this is a star where we would send our wishes for the year, hoping that they'd come true. This is your fellas, mokopuna, tamaiti. Anei, taku tamahini whakaangi tēnei. Noko nei, he nīkora te pāpā, o te wiri nei. And so when the book first came out, I showed her first, and I said, look, this is actually one of the photos in the book. And I said, look, and she goes, oh, what, one page? Rongo whakātā kenei. Ane, this is the cluster as I understand it. They are set in these particular places for a particular purpose. Matariki is the conductor of the cluster. This is the mother of these children. 3 of them are males. Okay? Now you'll see tipuanuku, tipuarangi. They're there in this position because rangi is always above nuku, never the other way around. Okay? Nuku should never ever be above rangi. That's Māori 101. Okay? Male, female, food. So there's balance male, female. It's kai, so there's no tapu in this part of the cluster. These two determine how your birds are going to be, how your gardens are going to be. Okay? Waiti, waita, female, male, balance. Food, so there's no tapu in this part of the cluster. The reason waiti is above waita is fresh water always flows down to salt water, never the other way round. You've got massive plumbing issues if your salt water is flowing downhill to fresh water. Waipunarangi and ururangi, female, male, balance. This is weather, rain and wind. The reason they're above everything else is because rain and wind comes from above everything else. Okay, it's pretty kind of simple, niha. Now, Pohutukawa and Hiwai Te Rangi. Why they're there, I don't know. Makorowa doesn't say why he positions them there. What he does say is these are the 2 sacred stars in the cluster. These are the 2 tapu stars. You see the others are connected to food and weather. Kare he tapu. This one is connected with carrying our dead. This one is connected with our wishes, the desires of your heart. Something that our tipuna did not share willy-nilly on Facebook, okay, and say, oh, I'm not feeling very good today, because people will be able to use that against you. So you were very, very cautious of what you shared and the words that came out your mouth, okay? So this is what our ancestors would look for in the early morning to determine what their year was going to be like. And they look for combinations. This is how you read it. You look for particular combinations with your naked eye. So if this star is really, really bright, I know, it's going to be a really, really good year to catch pigeon this year. The fruits high up in the trees are going to be big and bountiful because this is bright. This star might not be as bright. So I know, the gardens aren't going to grow that well this year. Now this star might be really, really bright. So I know that there's not going to be much rain. It's going to be a bit of a drought. And it's probably the reason that the gardens aren't going to do that well, because there's not going to be enough water. Marama? Okay. This star here might be really, really bright. And this star here might be really good as well. So I know fishing in the ocean is going to be really, really good because there's going to be little wind. So there's going to be a lot of flat ocean this year, which means I'm going to be able to get out and do a lot of fishing. But this star might be hard to see. And you go, the eels aren't going to run in the same numbers as they have in previous years. So you're looking for combinations to know how to approach your year. Now, if this star is missing from the cluster, that is a bad sign. If Pohutukawa is missing from the cluster, that is a sign that there are going to be a lot of dead associated to you and your people and your hapu the coming year. From winter to winter, you're going to have a lot of mate. That's how it was in the previous year. That's the sign we saw last year. Now, if Hiwa i te rangi is big and bright, that is a sign that it's time for you to send your wishes to Hiwa. Okay? I've been sending up for the lotto numbers for 20 bloody years now. Still waiting. What our ancestors would do is all those people during the Matariki celebrations, during the ceremony, and we'll talk about that soon, all of those people, if you've got a wish in your heart, that you were taken by the tohunga to the gardens. There's nothing growing in the gardens at this time. Hey, the gardens are, we didn't have silver beet and turnips and rhubarb. We didn't have a winter crop. We stored our summer crop in our pātaka, so we didn't have a winter crop. So there's nothing in the gardens. And the tohunga would dig a trench about this deep, and depending upon the size of your feet, about this big, mātai, that might have been this big for your feet. And you would stand in a line in that trench facing Hiwa. And the tohunga would pat earth around your feet. He'd plant you in the garden like a seed. That's what he's doing. He'd plant you in the garden like a seed. Then he'd karakia. He's doing the karakia to Hiwa. And the line in the karakia says, hira mai ai te whea ki te o te rangi, hira mai ai te nā wha o te rangi. He's doing this big long karakia. He says, Hiwa, ko Hiwa nui, ko Hiwa ro, ko Hiwa pūkena, ko Hiwa wānanga, ko Hiwa i te rangi. Great Hiwa, knowing Hiwa, wonderful Hiwa, Hiwa in the sky. Taka taka te kāhui o te rangi, ko ia pau tō putanga ki te whaiau ki te ao mārama. Come down from the heavens, plant my wishes in the soil, make them grow. That's what you're doing. You're trying to bring whakatinana i ngā wawataka i tō nākau, so trying to make your wishes come true. So yeah, that is the cluster. That's the sign that you're looking for in the early morning. This is the father, Rehua. So he's a medicine man. I don't know if you know, but one of his domains is rongoa. Koe nei te atu o te rongoa. So Rehua is the rongoa. This is where rongoa and the Māori for rongoa comes from. And he married the healer, Matariki. That star is a sign. If you see that star nice and bright in the sky, if you're sick or someone you know is sick, that's a sign that they'll get better. She's a healer. This is where the origins of the saying te paki o Matariki comes from. It doesn't come from the cluster, it comes from Matariki herself. It means if she is seen, that goodwill and health will be bestowed upon the people. So the medicine man married the healer. They have 8 children, and each and every one of them has a bounty for humankind. And these are the eyes of Tāwhiri Mātea. Okay. We're way too early in celebrating Matariki, and I want to talk about why that is. People think, oh, Matariki is the summer solstice, winter solstice. You fellas must know, you're the te tai rāwhiti. I had my doubts though, Mātai. Driving through yesterday, left Hamilton, beautiful day. Got to Opotiki, beautiful day. Come through the Waioweka Gorge, see all the stars. We got to that place called Ormond, it starts to rain. So I was like, te tai rāwhiti. You fellas will know that the sun doesn't rise in the same place every day, neha. So in the winter, it'll rise over there. In the summer, it rises further southeast. So in the winter, it rises northeast, and it's just short as it is at the moment. And in the summertime, it rises towards the east and towards southeast. It's long, hot days. In the middle of the day, the sun is straight above our head. So this is why in the middle of winter, when the sun begins to turn and bring its journey back to the earth, back to the east and back to the south, Matariki will stand in the sky just to the side of the sun and tell him, hoi, you've gone as far north as you're going, it's time to go back. So that's about the summer solstice time. But the problem with that is Māori didn't use the sun for their yearly calendar. And this is what we've done. We followed the lunar phases. And we are way too early when we're celebrating Matariki. And the reason is we've tried to ram and smash our lunar calendar into a Western Pākehā solar calendar. It takes 365 and a quarter days to go around the sun. That's what our year is based on. Our traditional maramataka Māori is based on a 354-day year. It's 11 days shorter than the Western calendar. So in 3 years, we're a whole month out. And so what we've done is we've just placed our traditional maramataka months over the top of a Western calendar. Kei te marama? So we say, oh, June is pipiri. June is not pipiri. June starts in whiro and ends in mutu whenua. That's when June is. The maramataka will tell you when pipiri is, not the Western solar calendar. Does that make sense? When we follow a Western calendar, we dictate to the environment when we're ready to do stuff. That's why Christmas Day is on the same day, the New Year's Day is on the same day. When you follow a maramataka, the environment dictates to you when it's ready. You have to fit in with the environment. And this is a reason why Matariki changes every year. The dates are different every year because you're waiting for the signs of the environment to tell you when to do stuff. So, you can see how the maramataka changes every night, neha. There are good times to do stuff, there are bad times to do stuff. Okay? It rises and it falls, it rises and it falls. A lot of people following Elton Best will tell you that the time to go out and find Matariki in the sky is whiro. Okay? Whiro, the god of death and disease and plague and illness. Who in their right mind goes out in that time to look for the signs of the year? Hara tērā i te whakaaro Māori. That is the worst time to go out looking for signs of the year. You're going out in the night of whiro to look for the signs of prosperity. Okay? The lunar phase affects us all. It's moods. These are moods. And you see they change pretty much all of the time. And Whitio is telling me that that's because the moon is a female. It rises and sets and rises and sets. It's got all these different moods. You can tell in the names. Neha. So this lunar phase is called Atua Whakahaihai, which means terrifying demon. Okay, it's not a good time to be out looking for stuff. Tamatea are not the best times, nor is a period called kore kore. Nothing's happening in kore kore because it's kore. Okay? So that's when the lunar phase dives. Then it starts to rise to the most productive and prosperous time of the lunar phase. This is the last quarter. These are the nights of Tangaroa. These are called Ngā Pō Tangaroa. This is when you look for Matariki. You look for Matariki during this period. The first clear morning of these 4 days in the lunar cycle, in the lunar calendar of Pipiri, you view Matariki. So if you see it here, you view it, you party, stop. When it says mutu whenua, kua mutu. You stop, otherwise you'll celebrate into whiro, and whiro will turn up to your celebration. Okay, so you don't celebrate for the whole month. You don't celebrate in kore kore, because it's kore. You don't celebrate in whiro, because it's whiro. You don't celebrate in atua whakahaihai, because it's a terrifying demon. You wait until the lunar phase, it's in its most prosperous time. So even though Matariki's in the sky, you've got to wait until you align yourself with your lunar phase. Kei te marama tēnei? Okay, because what this is showing you for the next few years, the dates that Matariki sets, because we celebrate its setting. These are the dates, the 4 dates, the 4 Tangaroa nights, where you should be viewing Matariki. And this is the celebration period, which is about a week long. This is when we should be looking at Matariki. Now in the book, they go to 2050, but I cut it off here because I want you to buy the book. Okay, this is a massive constellation in the night sky. This is called Te Waka o Rangi. Matariki is at the prow of this canoe. So you'll see Matariki here. Here is Tautoru. The captain of this canoe is a man by the name of Taramainuku. This is the Pohutukawa part of Matariki. Pohutukawa leads this canoe. And Taramainuku, this canoe is in the night sky for 11 months of the year. So when it rises, as the sun sets, Taramainuku stands on his canoe and he casts his net down across the earth and he trawls the earth for the souls of all of the people that have died that day. And as the sun rises, he hauls up to the heavens the souls of all the people that are in that net, and he hangs them from the back of the canoe as like a kura, like feathers. You've seen those hang from the back of a canoe? In this place called Te Hao o Rua, which is in the handle of the pot. And they hang there throughout the year. So if someone dies, Taramainuku comes, he hauls up that person's soul and hangs them there for a whole year. And that canoe gets higher and higher and higher in the sky. And then in the month of Haratua, which is around May, during the Tangaroa night, Tangaroa will set, that canoe dives into the ocean, taking our dead to the underworld, and we wait. We wait for the rising of this canoe. And when it rises on the east, over here, during the Tangaroa night, Taramainuku stands on his canoe, takes the souls of all of the people that have died that year, and ka ruirui i ngā mate hei whetū ki te rangi. And he casts them into the sky as stars. That's the moment that you become a star, that your loved ones become a star. You carry your dead on you, your close dead, for a year. We've got all these tikanga like, if someone close to us dies, we don't unveil for a year, neha. Or we might not do a whai kōrero for a year, or we might wear black for a year, and we've made that be a 12-month year because we're following a Pākehā solar calendar. Our tipuna followed this lunar phase. So they would wait until Matariki rose, and then they would sever the close bonds that they have to their dead and release them. And they would go into the sky as stars. I'm going to show you, hopefully this works. This is how it was this year. This was Haratua. You'll see that lunar phase there is Tangaroa. Here is the Tangaroa moon setting. This is looking west. And here's a few other constellations, Māori stars setting in the sky. Of course, you can't see them because the sun's up. There's the sun. Right next to the sun is Matariki, Pahutukawa. There's that canoe diving into the west, taking our dead to the underworld for a year. Now, you won't see Matariki, but you can tell by the lunar month, you can tell by the lunar phase and the position of Tautoru after the sunset that our dead have gone. And then you wait for a year, a month or so, and you look to the east. It doesn't happen as quite fast, it's a bit slower. This is the Tangaroa moon. This is how it was on the 17th of July this year. Here is Matariki here. There is this canoe. Taramainuku stands, casts our mate into the cosmos as stars, then the sun comes up. Kei te kite koutou? That's what you look for. Okay. There is a particular tikanga that our ancestors invoked at the time of Matariki. It's called Whāngai te Hautapu. This is a tikanga that's fairly much missing, and it was universal. It seems to have been practiced right across Aotearoa, especially there is a very, very good record of it here on the East Coast. Whāngai te Hautapu. Hautapu is a particular food that is fed to a god. Before we all converted to Christianity, our tipuna used to do things like feed atua. So when you have before you start planting in your garden, you cook a kai and leave that kai on an altar, and that would be a kai whorongo. And there your kumara would grow. In the time of Matariki, they would feed Matariki with a hautapu. So they would collect kai. They'd store particular kai. So they'd get a kumara for tipu anuku, and a bird, a kereru for tipu arangi, and an eel for waiti, and a fish for waita. And they would make this is before Tangaroa, just before the Tangaroa moon, they'd make a umu, and they'd cook that kai in the ground, and they'd leave it all in the ground cooking, and then they would wait for Matariki to rise. When Matariki rose the next morning, the tohunga would come out, and the first thing he'd do is view the signs and say, yep, good year this year for fishing, Bad year for gardening, good year for the All Blacks. That's the signs. Bad year for the Warriors, which is seems to be all the time. That hasn't changed, that sign. Then they would conduct a tikanga called a taki mō teatea. So the tohunga would karakia, and then he would stop, and all of the community would call out the names of the people that had died since the last rising of Matariki. You call out their names. This is when you sever the bonds to them. Call out their names. You say, haere so-and-so, 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 and all those dead upon you, that's when the bond gets severed, and you are free. You're free from the tapu of the mate that is on you. And then, once that had finished, they would take the top off the umu, and the steam would rise into the sky and feed Matariki. Matariki is tired from carrying our dead and bringing us bounty every year. So we'd feed Matariki to replenish it. This is called whāngai te hautapu. Now, you guys have probably the best record of the celebration in your haka that says, ko te hautapu e rite ki te kai nā Matariki. That means, ko te hautapu, the sacred food, rite ki te kai, prepared as food for Matariki. Tapa reireia ko ia tapa, severing the bonds to your dead. Tapa tukua, releasing them. Hi o we hi. And then the last bit, ia haha, ihika, tu te ihi, te wana wana, and then the sun rises. Ki runga i te rangi e tui honei. That part of a haka is known as a tuku. It's actually part of a karakia that's recorded in the number of iwi. But that's what it's about. Te hautapu, rite ki te kai nā, and a very East Coast way of saying it, Matariki, mata ariki, nā mata o te ariki. That's why the coast draw out that Matariki, which is probably the right way to say it. E ai ki taku rangahau, which opens the year known as te mātahi o te tau. This is the Māori New Year. So here you see the Tangaro moon, Matariki here is that canoe, Taramainuku's casting off all of the dead just before the sun rises. This is on top of this mountain called Hakari Mata. It's 1,700 steps in the Waikato. And we started conducting the ceremony a couple of years. We've done it. There was no way I was carrying up hangi rocks, and so we took up a burner and a pot, and we couldn't get a kereru. So we took up a chicken. Mā te ahi te whakaaro mātai. Stuff with miro. Yeah, and a kumara, and we conducted our ceremony. This year, however, we found a place that we could drive to. But it was still a bit of a walk. It's about I'm going to tell this story because you'll keiko nei koe tātere. Tātere is in this. You'll see Matariki just between the clouds here, before the rising of the sun. This is a group of us that went on top of a mountain called Rangi. You drive so far, and then there's probably about a 300-metre walk up this pretty steep place to the where. This is the par site of Tūrongo and Mahinarangi in Ngāti Raukawa. So we went up there. Rangi is a star. So we went up there. It's an old observatory. Anyway, we had to carry all of the wood up there for the hautapu and all of the rocks and everything else. And we made a tuahu. I'll show you in a minute up there. All these quite big boulders. Some tohunga from Kahununu, when we were down the bottom with these rocks, piles on 6 big rocks on in his arms and starts walking up the hill. And his wife is looking at him like this. Anyway, he goes around the corner, and we're all following, and we go around the corner, and then there's one rock on the ground. And then we go a little bit further, and there's another rock on the ground. And go a little bit further, and there's a third rock on the ground. I think he got up there with one rock. This is us conducting the ceremony this year. This is te hautapu, te umu kohukou whetū. This is what it's called, a steamy star oven feeding Matariki. This is conducting the karakia to the rising of the sun with the tuahu, severing the dead, and then we leave the kai. In there is eel, fish, kumara, and a pigeon. So this is our, and kawa kawa, and this is the sign to Pohutukawa. And yeah, this is what we did this year. The signs of the year this year is it's going to be a pretty lean year. It's going to be a lean year right across the board. I'd like to say to you that everything's going to be good, but he tau tūpuhi tēnei, he tau ruru tēnei, it's going to be a pretty hard, lean year. Pohutukawa was completely missing from the cluster this year. He tau mate tēnei, like it was last year. This was the read for us where we were. I'm not too sure how it would have been here. It applies to your region where you are, so it shows itself differently. So this is the book. Most of this is in the book, the English book. The Māori one comes out next month, I Te Wiki o Te Reo Māori. I'm going to hopefully show this little film. It's only small, it's pretty quick, maybe about 10 minutes, and hopefully the sound works.
Matariki. Kuro, can you help me with my homework, please?
Okay, let's have a look, eh? Okay, you know, these stars and their meanings has changed quite a bit these days. It's all a bit hurirapa, if you ask me. Yeah, this is okay, but, well, when Matariki rose into the sky, for our tupuna, for our ancestors, well, it really meant something special. It was like saying hello and goodbye at the same time. So everyone believes that there are 7 stars of Matariki, but there are 2 more stars that our tupuna acknowledged. They are Pohutukawa and Hiwai Te Rangi. Maybe we should start at the beginning, eh? So, in the beginning, there was nothing but darkness. Even when Rangi Nui, the Sky Father, and Papatuanuku, the Earth Mother, were separated, darkness remained. Ahakoa nā tāne te manotini o ngā whetū I whakanoho ki te uma o te pō. Arā te tehi kā hui kāori I whakarite hia eia, kia iri ai I ngā rangi. And while this Antane placed the stars in the sky, there was one constellation that he did not arrange. No te wehenga o Rangi Nui tāua ko Papatuanuku, ka tū pehu pehu katoa tā whirimātea. Distraught with rage over his parents' separation, Tawhiri gouged out his eyes and...
Kuro, what does distraught and gouged mean?
Let's try this then. Angry at his parents' separation, Tawhiri ripped out his eyes, crushed them, and cast the pieces into the sky. Ka puru te hia ka whiua ki te rangi, ki reira maumai ai, takamai ki nāia nei.
Kuro.
You know, Moko, This part of the story is quite a big deal.
I know, but I know stuff about Matariki too.
Yeah? Like what?
I know the stars are bound together by gravity. That's why when they move together.
Maybe that's because they belong together. Where'd you learn that?
Google.
Should I keep going?
Oh, yeah. Sorry, haere tonu.
Okay, where was I? Koe nei ngā mata o te ariki tāwhiri mātea, arā tana ingoa rongo nui ko Matariki. This is how the constellation Matariki came to be. Now, our tūpuna began using these stars for guidance in life and in death. So, Matariki is connected to the health and well-being of all people and is carer to the other 8 stars. Waiti is connected to all the kai we gather from our lakes and rivers, freshwater, yeah. Waita is connected to all the kai we gather from the oceans and its seashores. Tupuanuku. Now, Tupuanuku is connected to all the kai that grows in the earth beneath our feet. And Tupuarangi? Well, Tupuarangi is connected to all that grows plentiful in the trees, like fruits, berries, and birds. To find out about the weather in coming seasons, our tūpuna would seek guidance from Waipunarangi, which is connected to the rains. And Ururangi, well, Ururangi is connected to the winds. Now the other 2 stars, you know, the ones that seem to have been forgotten, are Pōtukawa, which is the oldest star and offers guidance to all our whānau and friends who have recently passed away. And Hiwaitarangi, the youngest star, which for our people is known as the wishing star. Now, year in, year out, our people would rely on Matariki to survive. And as an offering, our tūpuna would celebrate with Te umu kohu kohu o ngā whetū. Muramura ana, minihana, hukauri ana te ahi, he ahi tapu, he ahi no tua whakarere. Under a cloak of darkness, a sacred fire burns bright. The ceremony has begun. To celebrate this yearly gathering of the stars, an oven is carefully prepared. The priests keep a watchful eye on the cooking stones beneath, for they must become searing hot. This will be the offering to the stars. This must feed the chiefs of the sky. Kua tāpuku ia te umu kohu kohu, waihokia tauana, waihokia topana. The sacred earth oven is covered and the food of the stars is left to cook. And when ready, this oven will soon feed the 9 stars of Matariki.
Wait, I don't get it. How do you feed the stars?
Taiwa, the ceremony hasn't finished yet.
Ngā mata te ariki, tāwhiri mātea, ko ia tēnei ko te umu kohu kohu whetū, mā hau pohutukawa, ngā matea te taitoke rau.
Our tūpuna would then ask Matariki to guide our loved ones into the afterlife, into the next world. It was a time to acknowledge those who are no longer with us. It was a time for a last farewell.
E te apea te rua Matariki e, whakongaro atu rā koutou ki tua pai
earth oven is uncovered and the steam is released into the sky, rising up to feed the stars, to feed the chiefs, to feed Matariki. When the steam has cleared, the people then ate from the earth oven, enjoying the offerings that the stars had provided.
What? The food was given by the stars.
Yes,
Eh?
the best food they could find from Waiti, Waita, Tupuanuku and Tupuarangi.
Are you sure?
Yes I am. Waiti ki runga waiti ki raro e re o wai hei mana pau mo te whenua, hai o ranga mo te tāngata, hei ke te kai mā te iwi. Waiti above, waiti below. Your flowing waters provide life for the land and vitality for mankind. Tērā te marae no ia ki wa te kānaka na panei raro ia koe waita. Ia mai rā ki rana te tini ai ka tere. Kuhia ki tai, kuhia ki tātahi he kai ma te tini o tā. Behold the great expanse of the ocean. Its colors gleam blue and green. Dive and collect food for our people. Food for life. Kuia moa nai ai o. Tupua nuku ka pihi rani kia maaturi haere a kene. Tupua nuku, shoot up and grow down. Be plentiful. May the earth be forever fertile. Arara naki naki, arara tinaki. Hau haka tiara te tau, he tau huni. Maruru te wautu, mato te wautu, mā pua te puhikai ole ole e tau reina tamariki a tāne. Tērā kuia te puarani. Tupuarani. Thriving and lush is the forest upon which the children of Tāne settle. Namanu, ka momo na ngahua, ka puta kaora. Where are we up to? Oh yes. So Matariki also helped our tupuna foretell the coming weather, because that affects how well our food grows. Hara mai te hāua, hara mai te tarahi, hara mai te patapatai āwha. From the spring of the sacred sky, we acknowledge Waipunarani, for the land grows and the people flourish. Te whenua ka tupu te tangata. E ururami, whakamārire te atua matake ururami. Calm the unseen God. We ask not for violent winds. Instead, let it be a breeze to revitalize and refresh us all. Now, remember there is one star that holds the same name as the constellation? Matariki, guardian of the 8 stars. Matariki of many followers. Matariki, the great provider. Now, the last star is Hiwai Terangi. Our tupuna would ask Hiwa to grant their wishes for the coming year. All their hopes and dreams were entrusted in Hiwa.
Can I send my wishes to Hiwakoro?
You sure can, so now you know. Some cultures call it the Pleiades, others the Seven Sisters. But for our people, that same cluster of stars is very important. Ngā mata o te ariki tāwhiri mātea. Matariki.
Te iwa o Matariki ei koro.
Ai.
The wānanga did that in like 3 days, I think, that put together. Ko te wāhi ki au, he kōrero. And I gave that to Parao and Gloin and they ran off and produced that. Nō reira ka nui te mihi ki te wānanga Aotearoa. 3 days Māori, eh? You know, can just do anything. Get a person with a camera and a drone and a graphic artist and ane. So yeah, so kua mutu waku kōrero e karema, ka nui te mihi ki a koutou, e te iwi. He pātai?
Ngai. Oh, I think.
Kia ora.
How do you do anything differently in your life to support that whakaaro of Matariki and one of us tūpuna?
Every year, I take my read for the rest of the year from Matariki. So I read it this year and I'll do certain things this year because of Matariki. There are certain signs this year that are a couple of warnings. I think that, you know, it's taken me 20 years of viewing it to kind of tune myself into how it changes, and I'm still fairly much a novice. You know, we're so disconnected from our environment because we're living as Pākehā, whether we want to accept that or not. We do. We live in a very Western world and we don't need this knowledge anymore because if we want mussels, we go to Pack and Save. Hey, we don't actually interact with the environment like they used to. They knew everything, intricate details about the environment, the connections between the stars, the sun, the moon, the marine environment, the migration of animals. We don't do that. One of the biggest ones is the fact that we are Māori living in a Western division of time. So we live Monday to Friday and then have the weekends off. And that's when we have our hui in the weekends. The weekends quite often will fall on the worst times in the maramataka to have those meetings. Now, maramataka is a massive one. So what we're looking to do for next year is we're going to put together a maramataka Māori, which will have the Western days on there. So it'll be the 15th of December, and it might be rākau mātohi o haki here. And so you'll have the lunar phase and information about the lunar phase and the lunar month over the top of the Western calendar, so you can plan your schedule around that.
Cool, that was going to be my next question. So, they say, are you free on June 15th? You go, I'll see what the environment says.
Yeah, to that, to some extent I try and do that. So I try and think, oh, I really want to do this around this period, but sometimes, you know, we can't. We're bound to certain things. So yeah, I'm like everyone else. Oh, well, I've got to go to work on Monday otherwise. If I say, no, I'm not turning up until rākau nui, they're like, yeah, well, then you're unemployed.
Yeah.
With all this study, every hapu has these names like Te Ao, Te Atua, Matariki, Maharua. So, and they organise their whānau, their hapu, according to those precepts or concepts that are there. So there must be a huge reservoir of information or knowledge under our noses, and don't even know what it means.
So big, and people will say stuff like, oh, I don't know much, but I know this. This is a name that we have for the star and it's connected to such and such. And then I'll have that in a manuscript that I have that fleshes out a little bit more. Then you'll find it in a waiata in a Māori newspaper, that one of tāteres that he's showing. So when I came up here and interviewed Derek, for instance, I had some names and some questions to ask him, and he said, I don't know anything about stars. And then 3 hours of kōrero later, I was like, what? But he filled in so much. And other people from here I've spoken to as well, they'll have little things, but you stitch that together. Tātere said something as well. He said, you shouldn't get caught up in dialect. I totally agree with that. We shouldn't get caught up with looking at my hapu or my iwi's astronomy or because it doesn't exist anymore. But we've got more similarities than we have differences. And they'll probably, if I'm having a rule of thumb, probably 90% of it, 95 is the same. We'll have differences like, I'll say atu tahi, someone will say au tahi, someone will say ao tahi, but the kōrero's the same. So yeah, really there's so much. There is place names here. What's that whare wānanga just out of Gisborne there? Whare kōrero? No, not Rāwhioro. There's the hill. Whare kōrero, is it? Whare wānanga? Whare kōre titirangi. Yeah, that's an astronomical point. There's another one at Te Whānau o Kai. Ākai, I've seen. There's another astronomical point. There is some really awesome kōrero from this district alone. Yeah, but because we don't utilise that knowledge anymore, because like I say, we go to pack and say.
But tapu pātua is, what about planets?
Oh, bro, have we?
With a tūpuna way back, they had a lot of the planets.
This is one star of 1,000. So if we were to talk about the others, then we'll be here till Christmas. Hey, there's kōrero about the sun, about the moon, about comets, about meteors, about planets, about winter stars, summer stars, northern stars, southern stars, the movements, the readings. One of the kōrero that Mai Koroua has is he says the height of Māori knowledge is reading stars. He says because you're not interpreting your environment, you're actually interpreting ngā whakaaro atua. So you're actually looking at what the atua have put in place for you across the sky, and you're trying to interpret that. Fairly much like what you've done here, the weavers have done here with Te Wo Matariki, wa Rangi Matamua. Now they're interpreting their understanding of ngā tohu i te rangi. He rawe. To Māori it is. It's this word, what do they call it? Aorere, I think? Or aorangi. Okay? Wheturere is the proper name for a star, for a planet, traditional name. Because they were all whetu, but a planet is like us, it goes around the sun, so it doesn't rise and set like the stars. It'll come up and then it'll go back and then it'll come up. So they were wheturere, they were on their own buzz. Pātai anō? Tēnā koutou, I just want to end by saying that one of the plans that we have, Māwako Taku Hoa, we're looking to establish a whare kōkōrangi Māori, so an astronomical institute, or an institute of Māori astronomy, and we're looking to teach a new generation of Māori astronomer, kai roto i te reo Māori, me te reo Pākehā, those he kainākau ana ki enei kōrero. Like I said, I'm kind of at my wit's end with Matariki, because, I put the book out so people would stop asking me to come and talk. So I could say, read the book, or it's on YouTube. Go there. And it's not that I don't want to talk about it, but want to get into doing other stuff as well, because we're so fascinated and infatuated with Matariki, we forget that there are hundreds of other stars and constellations, and the only time we look at Matariki is the only time we look at the skies in the winter during Matariki. And then quite often people are looking the wrong way and not even knowing what they're looking at. It's not even in the sky sometimes. I went to this massive hui one time and they said, oh, do a kōrero. And I was like, no. And I was like, get up, there it is there. And I said, oh, kia ora everyone, that's Venus. Matariki be up in 2 weeks. Okay, so that basic knowledge of the movements of the cosmos. But we're looking to establish a whare kōkō rangi Māori. We're looking to teach papers about this and disseminate this knowledge to Māori. So yeah, that's the plan. Ka nui te mihi ki a koutou, nōku te hōnore te hara mai no mātou ni hā tātere. Te hōnore te hara mai te kōrero ki a koutou I tēnei hui a tātou mātai. Hei te hoa, ka nui te mihi. Kua muti te wāhanga ki a kia ora tātou.